everyone. Welcome to the Law Firm Reboot podcast. My name is Nick Worker. Now, during this podcast, we'll be featuring recordings of panels that took place live at Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. Before we dive into that recording, I wanted to briefly let you know a little bit about the camp's host, Answering Legal. For those not already familiar, Answering Legal is a 24/7 virtual receptionist service that exclusively works with the legal industry. Whenever lawyers can't get to the phone, our highly trained receptionist team is there to make sure they never miss the new client. Answering Legal now even integrates with your favorite legal softwares and provides a free mobile app. As a thank you for checking out our podcast, we're giving you a special free trial offer of Answering Legal, which includes an additional $300 off of services. To take advantage of this offer, visit answeringlegal.com, book a discovery call with our team, and just let us know you watched our Reboot podcast. Please note that this is a limited time offer. Now, without further ado, let's get to our panel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. My name is Doug Brown, and I'm your guest host for today's panel. I am a law firm leadership coach and consultant, host of Answering Legal's Law Firm Success Strategies podcast. My business is executive coaching, consulting, and speaking on strategy, leadership, communication, and succession planning. Now, as explained earlier today, all of our panelists will be law office management focused. And for our final conversation, we'll be discussing how to be more successful working remotely. Joining me for this conversation is Dena Lefkowitz. Hi, Dena.
Hi.
Emily Hirsekorn. Did I get that right?
Hello.
Okay.
Yep.
Krystal Champlin-Gerage. Gerage. Sorry, I saw that and I just messed it up again. I'm sorry.
And bonanza of difficult to pronounce names.
and Paul Llewellyn. Welcome, everybody. So let's just get started today by giving each of our panelists a chance to briefly introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the place where you work. And we'll start off with Krystal.
My name is Krystal Champlin-Gerage, and I own RJH Consulting. We are a boutique consulting firm focusing on growth of solo, small, and mid-sized firms across the nation and in Canada. We have several different service options such as executive coaching, consulting, fractional COO, and leadership academy that if you're interested in checking out, please definitely go to our website.
Excellent. Thank you. Emily, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Emily Hirsekorn here. I'm coming from Kansas City, but I serve folks everywhere. Most of my work is done remotely. I do some in-person workshops, however. One wing of my business is leadership development. So thrilled to be here for this program. And I have some really unique curriculum. We'll be talking a little bit, I think on my end at least, about energy today and how you can enhance your energy and performance and success. That is the curriculum. It's energy-based leadership development. Very, very cool stuff. Can use it for a single workshop or a year-long program. I also offer one-on-one coaching. And the focus for most of my work is I have a framework I've developed, the Career Confidence Code. It is career clarity, having really, really value-aligned goals in place, confidence, of course, work-life balance, and performance and energy management. So thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Wonderful having you here. Let's keep going. Dena, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dena Lefkowitz, and my business is called Achievement by Design because achievement doesn't happen by default, only by design. And I am a lawyer coach and also a former lawyer. I help lawyers get the things that they don't teach us in law school: how to get clients, how to get promoted, how to get along with other people and lead, and how to make a good career transition if you need to. And I'm also the author of this book, Winning in Your Own Court, 10 Laws for a Successful Career Without Burning Out or Selling Out, published by the American Bar Association. I'm glad to be here.
Wow, wonderful to have you. Paul.
Great, thanks for having me, Doug. My name is Paul Llewellyn. I'm an attorney in California. I co-founded Lewis and Llewellyn 12 years ago, and we now number 20 attorneys specializing in business litigation. And last year, I'd get my book as well. I wrote a book, Unshackled, Reimagining the Practice of Law. And it very much speaks to some of the topics Dena touched upon: how to get clients, how to generate business, how to service clients, and how to create a good law firm culture.
Terrific. I feel like we're all kindred spirits on this, although I haven't written my book. I did have a current article in the ABA law practice today on reimagining how law firms and generations should work together, improving communication. And just can't wait to get into it. So, one of the things that, as a recovering lawyer and recovering Bar Association director, one of the most important things I've seen is that we're not teaching leadership as such an important skill. It's critical to success, but we're not teaching it. And you all have so much experience. I'd love to hear from you what you thought your most important lesson that you've learned over the course of your career about being a good leader, especially when it comes to lawyers and leadership. So we can just freewheel it. Who wants to kick off?
I would love to.
Go ahead, Dena.
The best lesson I ever learned was to distribute loss at a rate that people can absorb it. And what do I mean by loss? I mean change. Even good change is very uncomfortable for a lot of people to process, whether it's scaling, growing the business, getting married, making partner. These changes come with a lot of angst sometimes, and we can't grab onto the next rung until we let go of the one below us. And so that necessarily brings some loss with it. And the best example I can give you is when I was working in the compliance department at the Alfred I. DuPont Hospital for Children. They rolled out this thing called continuous improvement, and they made tons of changes to the processes that the nurses would have to do, and some that they would no longer be allowed to do, like talk to parents before their children went into surgery. And I thought all hell was going to break loose in the hospital because they just rolled out too many changes at once. It erupted into a town hall and practically a revolt. So if they had rolled out those changes in a more measured way, allowing people to allowing that loss to be distributed and absorbed, they would have had much better success. So that's my favorite leadership lesson.
Great. I love that. Who would like to go next?
One of the greatest leadership lessons that I've learned is that leadership is not elite. It is one of those things that everybody in our organization can become a leader, whether you are a managing partner, you are the owner of the firm, you are, receptionist, a paralegal, whatever, an associate attorney, whatever level you're at, you can still become a leader. I think when we start leading teams or leading others within the organization and we feel like we're better than them, we've already failed. So one of the lessons that I've learned is just, making sure that I am also on that level and I'm getting the results and making sure that I'm pulling my team with me to get those results as well.
That's great.
I'd like to offer something in conjunction with what Krystal just said. I think for me, the biggest thing is this idea of a coach approach to leadership. And I love that more organizations are really embracing the coach approach. The idea being, like Krystal said, if anyone can be a leader, how do we do it? So a coach approach, I'm talking about getting curious, asking questions. So we're listening more than we are talking. Lawyers, myself included, we often love to hear ourselves talk. We like to be the experts, right? And sometimes maybe think we know all the things. So this idea of a coach approach is pulling back, trusting that the folks around you have a lot of expertise and wisdom to share, engaging them, pulling out their contributions, and really empowering everybody else as opposed to the much more traditional dictating how things are done in every which way. Seems to be not only more effective in the long run, but really, really healthy for relationships, retention, etc.
Love that. Paul?
Yeah, I think my biggest lesson or takeaway is basically lead by example, lead from the front. I don't think you can lead from behind. So I think, your team sees, are you in the office? Are you leaving at lunchtime every day? How do you treat clients? How do you treat each other? And I think in conjunction with that, one of my favorite books is by Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL, and the title is Extreme Ownership. And you will never find me throwing anyone under the bus, because ultimately, if anything happens, even if I didn't touch it, it's my responsibility. And so, we have a very flat culture. You'll never hear me refer to my associate or my sector. Everyone's my colleague. And ultimately, like I said, the buck stops with me, and I take responsibility for everything that happens.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I love what each of those things. The thing that I've observed is, in terms of being curious, getting curious and working on your emotional intelligence, your situational awareness, your awareness of yourself, and how you communicate is probably one of the most lifelong pursuits that leaders should engage in. And because I've found that it addresses a lot of those things, including our tendency to listen to respond more than just listen to listen. What I guess a follow-up is, and you can choose to take this either way that you would like, is what are the qualities that you see in either, the best law firm leaders, what they have in common, or maybe those who have the most opportunity for improvement, the things they don't do well. Why don't we reverse it a little bit? Paul, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, I think the best leaders, and something I try to replicate, is first and foremost, you treat your colleagues as people. They have a life, they have setbacks, people die, pets get sick, children get sick. And so first and foremost, just treating them like people first. We always try and, someone, they're moving house, they're going to get a gift card to Williams-Sonoma from my firm. It's their birthday, they're going to get a bouquet of flowers. Just treating people, I think, as people first and foremost. And I think that goes such a long way to creating the culture, the collaborative culture.
Yeah, I see that. How about Emily? What do you think that best law firm leaders have in common?
I would say an unwavering desire and effort to grow. At first, I was thinking to be their very best. And I like that, but without more discussion, without more time, I think that can get confusing with a lot of us perfectionists out there, right? Because that can be problematic if we're trying to be the best all the time. Very frustrated. We're, of course, going to fall short, but just continuing to grow. I know as a company owner, I'm the only one who works for my company, so it's all on me. You got to get up every day. You've got to be doing your own assessments. What worked? What didn't? If you don't get good reception from something, you have to think about that. What do I need to change? What resources are out there to help me? So very much this action orientation, solution focused, forward thinking perspective and desire to continue to grow and keep moving forward.
That's so important. I love that you made the distinction between being your best and growing, because I see so many of us who are afraid of failure, or if I can't be my best, why should I try? So that's such a great framework to recognize you're always going to improve. I love that. Let's see, Krystal, what's your perspective?
What do you think that investing in yourself, finding colleagues, finding a mastermind group, something that you're going to be able to relate to, invest in yourself and invest your skill set so you can not only better yourself as a leader, but also better your team leaders as well.
Great. Yeah. Dena?
I think the most important quality is to be encouraging. I consider a law firm leader as the encourager in chief, or the chief encouragement officer. And when I was in the beginning of my legal career, I worked for a managing partner who was a phenomenal litigator. He was like 6'5", he had silver gray hair and piercing blue eyes. We used to call him the silver fox. The only thing about him was he kind of made you feel like you could never be as good as he was. Flash forward, I was working at the Office of Open Records in Harrisburg for for a boss named Terry Muchler, she made me feel like I could do anything. And so I went and argued before the Supreme Court. So the difference between an encouraging boss and a boss who isn't encouraging is like the Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And the encouraging boss will help you see that you can.
Yeah, I love that. And I've got to stop saying I love that. It's over and over again. But
You love to hear it, Doug.
I know, right? Right. You give me good validation. One of the things that I've observed when people are trying to be at their best and do the things that you all have described is how difficult it is to do that when they are under chronic stress and pressure. So I'd love to just extend a bit and get what are some of the effective ways that you've seen these leaders be able to separate sometimes the crushing pressure that they feel and when they may not feel their best, but also then trying to be their best for their people?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Krystal was saying earlier about investing in yourself and joining a mastermind, making sure you have some sort of peer group, resources, business coach, whatever it may be. Validation for folks in these situations is so crucial. When people feel like they are alone, they sink down, they are stuck, they are unproductive, overwhelm, you are not productive, maybe some sadness, feeling sorry for ourselves. It doesn't work. And I think that's the natural tendency for most of us, especially I know for myself, when I was young and all through law school, I worked by myself. I did not study with people. I was always very, very independent, and it doesn't work when you get into the real world. So I just think validation is so, so important, whether it be from a one-on-one professional service provider or a group of peers. I've done a ton of group coaching for the past couple of years. And time again, when we ask what the biggest takeaway is, a lot of times people will say just having other people in the room nodding their head when I'm talking. So I feel like I'm not the only one. It makes me feel better. I believe they call it common humanity or shared humanity. That concept is really, really important.
Terrific. Other thoughts on how leaders can maybe be their best for others when they're not feeling at their best?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, being a lawyer is hard, and people come to us at typically the most stressful time in their life. They're going through a divorce, they've been in an accident, they've been sued, and we're taking on their problems. Add to that, they think we're available 24/7. In the last 5 or 10 years, texting now, they think nothing texting 11 o'clock at night or on the weekends. You wouldn't think to text your doctor and expect a response, 11 o'clock at night. But lawyers, it's fair game. And so I think, as a team, and I completely agree with what Emily said, like treating each other, how we treat each other, and basically injecting some humor into it. We're all on the same team here. And I saw this T-shirt the other day, and it just said, "Be kind. It's really not that hard." And I think, like I said, it's a hard job. Let's not make it harder by being jerks to each other. We're on the same team.
Yeah, I see that. Dena, what's your view?
Well, Paul kind of stole mine, which is always being available is the easiest way to get into burnout. You have to get away from your phone and your computer and your law life sometimes. Even machines need to be turned off sometimes. And Paul also mentioned the doctor, which is an example I often use. If you're having a baby and your doctor's on vacation, they're not coming back to deliver your baby. But lawyers will come off vacation, they will come back, they will take calls, they will prepare briefs. They act like they're just working away from home in a different location sometimes. So always being available is really the worst thing that you can do to yourself. It leads to nothing but burnout and lack of productivity and decreased output and all of those things. You're really not being productive when you're always available.
Great.
And on that note, when I was a big law, there was this lawyer that would always take their phone into the bathroom with them. So literally, don't mean to get too graphic here, he'd be having a pee while he's checking his email. We're not heart surgeons, we're not kidney surgeons. No one's going to die in those 2 minutes it takes to go to the bathroom. So let's step back here. The other thing I tell my colleagues, look, just because a client's calling, it might not be convenient for me right now. You don't always have to pick up the phone. It's okay to call them back at a time that's convenient to you. Equally, email is someone else's to-do list. Just because someone emails you, they want an answer now, I may be working on something else. So don't feel that you have to instantaneously respond. And to a certain extent, it's training clients. You're not always going to get a response in 10 seconds, because if you always do, then that's what they expect.
And it's also a matter of respect. I have a client whose boss used to take a pee while he was on the phone with her. And it was terribly disrespectful to do that. So I just want to add that.
Well, let's get this conversation out of the restroom. As frightening as that is, Krystal, just a kind of a follow up for you, and you can chime in on this on the other question too, and that is, do you think some of that behavior, this need to always be available and please others, you think that's like an insecurity thing? Where do you think that comes from?
Leadership is a perception, and we all have our perceptions of ourselves, right? And sometimes those perceptions or that noise in our head really isn't telling the truth. And so when we try to reframe some of our beliefs or change some of our habits, sometimes just changing that one thing, like don't pick up the phone in the bathroom, or setting those client expectations, that goes a long way in the result that you're going to see within your firm. So again, I think it's a mindset shift as well, and it's discipline and its habits.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. One of my big aha moments for myself was, realizing that self-care wasn't selfish. It actually increased my capacity to not only work with more people, but be better at working with them and be better present. But until that point, I was probably in my 40s before I figured that out. It was, I'll take care of myself last. And that leads to lots of not great places. So Dena, law firm leaders have lots of responsibility, and setting priorities is always a challenge. How could our listeners better prioritize the important work of developing themselves as leaders without sacrificing all the other responsibilities that are, banging on their door?
Well, it is a balancing act. And I think the first thing you have to realize is that you can't do everything. So the question, in a way, suggests the answer itself, prioritizing. And here's where I start. When I get a new lawyer client, I'm getting a super busy individual who's already got all the balls in the air and now wants to add another ball, right? They want to do something, and coaching is the way that they're going to do it. Well, how are we going to fit that in when they're already so busy they barely were able to make time for our phone call, not to mention the things that they're going to be doing in between our calls? So I start with energy drainers, which are things that we are tolerating in life that aren't benefiting us at all. For example, many lawyers are seen as the problem solvers in their family. We're the executors for our parents' wills. We're the sounding board for people's problems. And if you happen to be a coach, you're a double whammy, because not only are you a good listener, you have some legal knowledge too. So we can, if we don't protect ourselves, we can spend hours on the phone with people like this who aren't going to make the changes that we suggest, who aren't going to do anything about it, and just want us to listen to them vent. So I would say, cut that time in half. You don't have to cut people out of your life, but you also don't have to do it as much as you're doing it. Fences make good neighbors, and boundaries make good friendships. The second thing I say is delegating. Are you doing things below your pay grade? Do you have a system for delegating? A lot of times I ask that, and they say, well, what do you mean? I just say do it, and I give them a deadline, and that's it. But if you have a system for delegating, you will have better results. Telling people the desired results, giving them guidelines, giving them a deadline, telling them what resources they can use, accountability, and the positive impacts of doing that work will be a lot more likely to bring you what you want.
So if I'm a managing partner of a law firm, and I've got 25 pounds of stuff to put in a 5-pound bag. How would you suggest I try to figure out what to tackle first? And even before I get to delegation, I've got to come up with priorities. How do you suggest your clients attack that?
There's a great demonstration that I think Stephen Covey used to do, where he would ask people to fit a bunch of rocks into a vase, and most people would put the little rocks in first, and then they would start trying to jam the big rocks in, and it didn't work. So the experiment was designed to show them, you put your big rocks in place first. What are your main priorities? What are the deal breakers that you've got to get done this week? What is most important? And those are your big rocks. And then you have to find places to put your little rocks. And that's one of the reasons I suggest looking at energy drainers, how you're spending your time now, and also consider doing an audit of your time. We all have 168 hours a week. You, me, Beyonce, all of us. So how are we deploying those? And one thing you could do is, this was an idea from Laura Vanderkamp, is to do an audit, do a 168-hour timesheet, if you will, and see how you're really spending your time, because that might lead to some aha moments. Every time I've had a client do it, it has. Like, I didn't know I was spending that much time on Facebook. I didn't know I was spending so much time, playing on my computer. And then you can find some pockets of time where you can do something more meaningful.
That's great. Yeah, I'll often also ask somebody to list off what they say they value on one side of the page, and on the other, how you're spending your time, and then how do those dots connect? And it's a sobering experience. So Emily, one of the things that if we want to change our external environment, all the stuff that's happening around us, we have to change our internal environment. And, I was curious about how developing yourself personally, how personal development affects somebody's ability to develop their own leadership skills.
So first things first, personal development is leadership development. Okay, so that's it. I could stop there, but I'll elaborate a little bit more. So several different points here. I think the most important one, though, and someone has mentioned this, I think Krystal was touching on it, is identifying and addressing limiting thoughts. I'm not going to get into all of the varietals of that, but just this big idea that we have so many subconscious. This is why, as Doug, you have mentioned, awareness is so important. We have so many subconscious limiting thoughts that are blocking us from pursuing opportunities or just doing things differently, especially leaders, when we have a new team member or the opportunity to hire or new technology. I mean, so much change. We might not even go after it. Or business development. We might not be going after it because these limiting thoughts are holding us back. That's one big way that they block us. Also with relationships. A lot of times we are interpreting situations with other people and we're making shit up. We make up stories when we have a limited set of facts. And a lot of times it's negative. And unfortunately, that affects how we show up then in those relationships. I always give the very, very basic and probably common example. If you work in an office, someone walks by your office, they walk by really fast, their head kind of down, right? And you think, oh, they're avoiding eye contact. They didn't like the work that I did, or they didn't like that email I sent them, or we just make stuff up when it's probably not about us, right? We think it is, usually isn't. Who knows what's going on with them? Like Paul said, the dog's sick, or who knows what. I've got a kid unexpectedly at home right now. It's a little bit stressful. So really identifying when we are doing this, when we are coming up with these ideas that aren't necessarily in line with reality, so that we can start to challenge them, pull back, and then actually lean into that relationship with whomever that was, instead of avoiding. So relationships, it affects as well. And just generally our effectiveness at work. If we get some new big opportunity, it comes across our desk and we think, I can't do this, or I've never done this before, so who am I? We're less likely to lean in and be really engaged and be really effective. So I think that's the most important thing here when we're talking about personal development, identifying and addressing those limiting thoughts. Just really quickly, one more really important thing too. And of course, we've started to touch on this, but it's taking good care of yourself. I love that Paul was talking about essentially walking the talk, leading by example. That is really, really important. People, partners in law firms and leaders are saying a lot of things, do this, we encourage this, but people are watching you. What are you doing? Are you taking vacation? Do you exercise in the morning? Do we really have time for this? So it creates a culture, but also an air of trust when they see that you're walking the talk.
Yeah. Have you observed that lawyers, maybe leaders, but lawyers especially, we're much better leaders of other people than we are ourselves?
Yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, advice, coaches as well, right?
Right.
Anyone in that kind of role. Yes, I think it's human nature. It's easier. And I think because it's this objective lens, we have a more objective lens. When I say this to my clients all the time, when I offer some feedback and they're like, wow, I never thought of that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not in the weeds in your head, right? There's so many layers clouding everything in there. And if we can just peel that back, so helpful, which is why it's really important to get that objective outsider as well.
I see this all the time. I like to play a lot of golf. I'm not very good, but I regularly observe, maybe hopefully not so much in myself, how we talk out loud to ourselves, bad about ourselves, like we would never even think about another person. But somewhere the narrative in our head, our inner voice, is telling us how incompetent we are. And I think that one of the internal environment is giving yourself a little of the grace and the patience that you might have for others. Because you're right, the limiting beliefs and how we talk to ourselves drives it drives how good a leader we are. And I found that all of my outside professional development has in some way made itself back to being a better leader. Like you said, the personal development is leadership development. Krystal, one of the things that, I see all the time, I think Dena or Paul may have mentioned it already, is this idea that leadership and delegation are going hand in hand. And it kind of doesn't, some of it is, I hear from smaller firms, well, I don't have anybody to delegate to. Okay. but even if, let's assume you have somebody, right? You've got to build some sort of hierarchy, right? And how can firm owners be better leaders by delegating, effectively without abdicating?
There are people who want to get to that next level of growth and success within your firm. So identify those people and create a leadership team. That leadership team may be 1 or 2 people. It may be 5 people, or you're creating leadership committees that handle, hiring, that handle a little bit of the marketing, those different pieces. That way it gets it off of your plate. They're still reporting to you, but you're empowering them to be a leader as well and take some of the stuff off of your plate, but also allowing them to grow within your organization. I found that to be really, really effective, especially in some of the smaller firms that are trying to get to that next level of growth.
Mm-hmm. So if a firm, if you've got a small firm and they don't necessarily have people on whose work with them every day, it could be a team, is there still a way they can get some of that benefit? Maybe.
Yeah. So there's fractional people out there that can help, that they can hire. There's also, there's somebody on your team that's willing to do some of it. So if you're maybe like a 3-person shop, there's someone that's willing to pick up a little bit of extra slack just to help you guys get to where you need to be. I think having those crucial conversations with your team members that, hey, I need help and I need to delegate this to you. I know that this is not in your job description or your box, but can you please step out and help me do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And as Dena said earlier, having a process to delegate and having that feedback loop of what's working and what doesn't. We've all been victims of the drive-by delegation at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, stack of manila folders dropped on your desk. I vowed never to do that to other people, but maybe I have.
Set those expectations.
It's hard to set boundaries, especially when you're young and you are trying to prove yourself in what might not be a really hospitable environment. And it leads me to a question for Paul of if you've got a law firm leader who's trying to find a way to get through to help mentor a younger attorney, create that environment that they'll want to stay. And maybe you feel like you're from Mars and they're from Venus because of the generational differences or whatever. What advice can you give to a leader who's trying to break through and create that mentoring relationship with younger lawyers?
Yeah, I think several things. Number one is give them the at-bats. And this sort of goes hand in hand with delegation. Like, I think there can be a mentality, well, only I can do this. I could do it better. And sometimes 80% is fine. And there's no way to grow as a law firm unless you are willing to delegate. And also it's sort of managing up. Like, I'll sometimes draft an email or draft a letter and give it to an associate and say, here, can you review it? Please comment on it. And then they get to learn that it's not just a one-way relationship. And, I think the phrase is managing up. Like, never be afraid to pick up the phone or come by my office or, here, Paul, you need to look at this. You're holding on to it too long. And that way, I think, really is trying to give them ownership. Look, treat it as if I was hit by a bus tomorrow. This is your case. And so what would you hear, rather than just being told what to do? And so really, it's just trying to give them the freedom that, imagine this is your case. And also stand by them. Like, look, if something didn't go perfectly, just so they know that you have their back, and that I will back you up. Whatever you decide, if it was a rational decision, it might not be what I would do. But I think, as Richard Branson said, there are very few decisions that can't be reversed. And so it's just knowing that we're a team together.
Yeah. Paul, if a young associate came to you and said, I really want a mentor, but I'm afraid to let my partners know that I'm afraid or making mistakes. How do I have that conversation to get them to mentor me without me appearing weak?
Oh, I think, that's part of your law firm culture, I think. So it really goes to the heart of the firm. And as leader, I once deposed a CEO, how would you describe your job? And he said, to set the strategic direction of the organization. And that really, to me, sums up being a law firm leader. You're the captain of the ship, you set the direction. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier, sort of leading by example, creating that safe space where they can hopefully feel comfortable coming to you with that. And also, like in my firm, we do have a formal mentorship program. Each partner is assigned one or two associates. So rather than waiting for them to come to you, be proactive and say, look, we want to you to be mentored. And so, like I said, don't wait for them to come to you. Just implement it, create it.
That's great. One of the things I've observed, I'm curious if you all have too, this is for everybody, is, we lawyers tend to devalue things that seem too simple. Like, we need to have complicated solutions with, 25 paragraphs of circles and arrows to make things. And so we dismiss simple things or things we think are cliche. So what have you seen that is a deceptively simple practice that has helped you or maybe helped your clients when it comes to being a better leader that maybe a lawyer might dismiss because, that's too simple? Who wants to tackle that one?
I have two.
Go
I
ahead.
have two. And I'll also just say I have so many client calls where they're like, I'm so embarrassed that I didn't think of this, or this is so simple. Like, what are we doing here? I'm like, you don't do it on your own. So here we are. So this question really resonated. So number one, time blocking. Okay. I'm shocked that, I feel like almost everyone I put this out there to is not currently doing it. You've got something that needs to get done, put it on the calendar, it's about you estimate it'll take 2 hours, give it a 2-hour window. You can't get it done in that time frame. That's okay, but move the time block on the calendar. Don't just get rid of it. So that's number one. Number two, possibly even more ridiculous, is a pros and cons list. When people are making decisions, and I put that out there, how about we make a pros and cons list? They're like, yeah, I could have done that, but I didn't think to do that. Make a pros and cons list. And then just looking at the things, sometimes there are a lot of pros and just a couple cons, and the decision is easy. Sometimes we see themes cropping up throughout. Family. Oh, family's a core value of yours. Let's think about how we can honor that with this decision. So simple tools like these can be really, really helpful with effective decision making and time management.
Yeah, so agree.
Paul? Here's one very simple. So I use Outlook for email, and there's a plugin. It's $10 a month. It's called Boomerang, and all it is, it's a pause button, and you literally just press pause on your email. And could I close my Outlook? Yes, I could, but for some reason, I'm more comfortable having it open. And it's just like watching a TV show. You literally just press pause. You can focus on something for an hour. Then you press play again. Your emails come in. And often, instead of the every minute an email's coming in distracted, just chunking, oh, actually, no, these 10 don't matter. I only actually need to respond to this one. So as far as productivity, that's made a big difference to me.
Love that. Dena?
I would like to add to what Emily said about time blocking. Also, break down the task. Like if you put write brief on your calendar, well, you're not going to be able to get that done in one sitting. So break it down, review other side's brief, review complaint, write all the things down so that you have a realistic time to block.
Love that. Krystal, do you have any? Go ahead.
I'll just segue into my tip, which is active listening.
Uh-huh.
I think that is a deceptively easy thing to do and makes people feel so heard, so cared for, and so lucky to work with you if you actually sit down, make eye contact, and make a point of really active listening, which means that you would be able to summarize what they just told you easily.
I agree with all of that. I think, I was going to say time blocking as well, Emily, because I practice and preach that. And I firmly believe that if you're not time blocking, then you're not working effectively, right? I think one of the other things that we tend to forget is that, we can have closed office hours and we can have open office hours where people can come to us and ask questions. And that's okay to close our door and let our team know that, hey, we're working on something super important and not to bother us unless the building's on fire, right? And sometimes as owners or leaders of the firm, we say, I don't want to shut my team out. I don't want them to think that I'm not available for them. I don't want them to not come up to me with questions if they need them. But setting that structure and those expectations, not only for your team members, but for yourself, you're going to see a lot more productivity from them and from you.
Yeah, we could probably have a great time just doing a speed round for an hour on the simple tips that really work. My favorite is picking up with what Paul said is turn off the notifications and the when you get your email and your text. I've had them off for 20 years. I have not ever forgotten to check. In fact, I check too much. It's like walking to the mailbox 4 times a day. The 40 times a day. I started keeping track of how many times I checked. Oh my God, it was embarrassing. The thing that
we're not that important, right? We're not that important.
Oh, well, part of it, and this kind of gets to my other thing is I finally gotten to the point where for myself and my clients recognize how your brain processes information and your high and low energy types of times of the day, and try to work with your neurotype. So yeah. I'm very easily distracted. I like to go after shiny objects. I'm great at starting things, and then sometimes it's just not the right time for me to work on something. And so when I started working with that and saying, okay, this is where I'm at right now. What can I accomplish? Do I need to just take a break and come back to it? Putting my high energy tasks at my high energy times of day and gamifying things. That's how my brain works. My life became much easier, as opposed to doing what somebody with a different neurotype, whether it's a introversion, extroversion, somewhere on the DISC scale, whatever your unique neurotype is, knowing what that is and working with it makes life dramatically easier. And it sounds so simple, but giving yourself permission to do that, for me, it was game changing.
A lot of clients that I tell them to figure out what their work of mastery is. What is their area of mastery, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's in the center of your desk that you can get done with little energy? And those other things that sit on the corner that really drag you, that you know you have the capabilities to do, you have the skill set, delegate those to other people on your team on your team, so you can get those things done, but they don't drag you, so you can focus on the things that really matter.
Yes. So much of, and I've been talking to lawyers about leadership, as you all have for many years. And I found, maybe less today, but this idea that it's kind of soft and squishy, this whole mindset idea. That's not a hard legal thing. I like hard things that I can understand. And I think people are coming around that these soft skills, like the mindset you use, are really powerful, but I think there's still a lot of resistance to it. Could this is kind of for each of you, comment on what you've observed of the role that mindset plays in being the kind of leader that your firms need?
I think confidence, like I've been practicing law now almost 25 years. The longer you do it, you realize no one actually knows what they're doing, but you just get better at. So it's inspiring your younger people. There is a plan. He at least appears to know what he's doing. So just having confidence, but also sometimes you don't know what you're doing. So it's like, okay, this is a tough problem. Collaborate. What do we do here? What do you think we should do? What's your recommendation? But yeah, so if anyone does actually know what they're doing, I'd like to meet them, because I've yet to.
That's why we call it practicing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully doctors, then I'm now afraid when I go to a doctor, hopefully they don't feel the same as us. Hopefully they do know what they're doing.
I think they might, but other thoughts on mindset?
Well, a couple of things have been mentioned. Emily said earlier, we think we know all the things. That's a mindset, right? That's a lawyer mindset. And you just said, Doug, I like hard things that I can understand. That's a mindset. Mindsets are just things that we've believed or thought for a very long time. So I think it's a good idea to ask yourself why. Like for a long time, I thought I didn't want to go to court. And then my boss thought that I really should. And so I thought, well, why don't I want to? What is going on? And of course, you all know the answer was fear. Fear is what was standing in my way. So interrogate yourself a little bit. Ask why.
Great point.
It's hard to even respond to this question, because mindset is in all that I think a lot of us do. But one thing that I would say is certainly affecting follow through and accountability. So a lot of things that I do revolve around work-life balance and setting these micro goals for health and well-being. Or let's say someone's going through some sort of transition and or business development, and they're setting goals to be reaching out, attending events, etc. We can sit down and say we're going to do something all day long, and the follow through is really poor if we don't have the right mindset. So if we think, oh, I'm just going to tell this lady I'm on the phone with that I'm going to do this, but it's no big deal. And, of course, something else will come up that we want to do more, or we could argue is priority, and then we drop it off and we don't do it. So if we can sit there and really establish why something is so important, like Dena said, asking that question, why, in a different sense, I think it's really, really interesting to see how that shift in mindset can actually translate to a shift in behavior, and then ultimately a shift in our outcomes and success. I think it's hilarious when we talk about lawyers and corporate folks, being funny about mindset and all this stuff. I think it's hilarious because it is just so it seems so obvious to me at this point why it's important. So I also think it's a matter of how we talk about it, the language we use. Do you want to get more clients? Yes. Great. How are we going to do that? And kind of working backwards and then getting to the buy-in. Ultimately, sometimes that can be effective too for folks who need a little bit more help getting there.
Great. Krystal, what are your thoughts?
Making it a habit and just creating that discipline within your schedule and making sure that those things do happen. And I know, like Emily alluded to, things come up, but knowing that this is important and this is important to our careers, this is important to our growth, and making that a priority in your life.
Yeah, I think that, just a theme to add on is we as lawyers have been trained to be so risk averse. It's on when I was in house counsel, we were sometimes called the can't do department, right? We're going to, and the shift is instead of saying, because I don't know how, or because I'm afraid I can't, to shift the mindset and say, this is, like Emily said, this is where I want to go. This is why it matters. This is a vision of the future. Now let me figure out how to make it happen, one step at a time, and embrace the learners that we were when we were in law school, as opposed to this feeling now that we're supposed to know everything. We're ultimately just learners. But if we can get out of our own way of being the can't do department, because it might be risky. I tell in my speeches that, WD-40, the industrial thing on everybody's workshop is called that because WD-39 didn't work. Like there were mistakes are how we learn and innovate. So
I am stealing that, Doug.
You may. I taught innovation, leadership, and entrepreneurship for 6 years in an MBA program, and I got a million of them. But it's true that if you look up things like, Post-it notes were a mistake. They were trying to make a glue that wouldn't ever release. It's fun experimenting with that. So speaking of mistakes, our whole environment seems like the pace of change, which Dena, you mentioned earlier, has just accelerated to almost ludicrous speed. How can, in our final few minutes, how can a law firm leader better be prepared to lead their team through this uncertainty that we're living in now that is just going to keep accelerating?
I think they need to bring people who aren't lawyers, experts in other areas, into the C-suite. And don't call them non-lawyers. Don't define them by what they aren't. Too much inbreeding has led to stagnated growth in the legal industry. And I think more innovative thinkers at the top of the food chain are what's necessary.
Krystal?
Dena, making sure that you're getting people out there that can serve the needs of your firm and what your vision is and your strategy is. Sometimes those people have better ideas because they're seeing things from the outside view rather than, the culture and that you've created all of these years.
I would just dovetail off of the conversation we just had about mindset and the earlier conversation as well. I think we can do work, really good self-work, to develop a more adaptable mindset, to be more adaptable and open to change. And I really think people should start thinking about practicing and experimenting with small changes and see, nothing bad happened. The sky didn't fall. I can do this, and really desensitizing. So it's a matter of making that commitment, deciding to do it, doing the work. It definitely is some self-work, but I think that can help us prepare really for anything. It's a matter of building up resilience.
Yeah, I agree with Emily. Don't be afraid of it. The world's always going to change. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stand still. So, and equally, don't be afraid just because we've always done it this way. Don't be afraid. You know what? Let's try something else. Or, well, every other law firm does that, so we have to do that. No, we don't. So yeah, embrace it. Don't fear it.
One of the things that I've maybe one more question for everybody before we wrap up is this idea of vulnerability and authenticity when it comes to being a leader. When I was in those some very difficult positions as a leader, I discovered quite by accident that embracing the I don't know, or that I'm emotional too, or it actually kind of increased the credibility I felt like I had with the team. What is your views on that versus the lawyers thought of, well, I'm the leader, I have to have all the answers.
Oh, I used to hate saying I don't know. I hated it. But I learned that I'm not a gumball machine, and I don't always know the answer, even if you put the quarter in. So, learning to tell people, let me think about that. I think you're right, Doug. It only enhances your credibility. And then you come back to them with a well thought out answer.
Often had clients or made them stand up in front of their teams and say, hey, you know what? I messed up. I did this wrong. We're going to do it this way now. And if you have any thoughts or ideas about that, definitely bring that to me. And it just gives that level of, hey, you know what? We're all playing on the same team together, right? And it just opens that door for you guys to move towards that common goal together. I think that's a great leadership trait.
We're focusing a lot on the impact on others, the folks we're working with and supporting. But I also think again, I'm going back to this coach approach to leadership. It relieves the pressure.
Yeah.
If you don't have to know everything, if you don't have to be perfect and can say, even when you said that, I felt, I'm like pathologically empathic here, but I felt relieved. I was like, oh, good. I don't have to know everything. So I just think that's an interesting thought as well, where it's really this big win-win all around.
Yeah, and we've touched on already, but I'm a firm believer admitting, yeah, I was wrong, and don't be afraid to apologize, or and also, but on that note, say I was wrong, and this is what we're going to do now. And also, I think explaining your thinking. So, say you're implementing a decision, and if people understand the why, I think that can go a long way. Why you decide not to do something, or to do something, or you're turning down someone's request, something like that. So, explaining the why, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah, and I would. Part of the embracing the I don't know, but I'll figure it out is getting over, I've got to do it myself. There's no special sticker at the end for saying I did it all myself. And having someone like one of you on the team, in their board of advisors or their circle of influencers, to help them see things they don't see. Heck, that's what the best athletes in the world do. Yet somehow we as lawyers think that there is some special award at the end of your career that's saying, hey, did it without asking for any help, or she did it without asking for help. If our boot campers are interested in connecting with you further, how can they go about doing that? And we'll start with Krystal.
rjhconsulting.com. You'll find a contact form there that you can fill out, and we will be in touch with you. Or you can find me on any social channel.
Great, thank you. Emily.
Hirsekorncoaching.com, my website as well. It's the best place to find me. Stay in touch on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, but happy to chat and connect there. I'm always happy to have a free phone call as well. So you can book that on my website.
Thank you. Dena.
You can call me up, 215-696-3079. Visit my website, achievementbydesign.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there, Dena Lefkowitz.
Paul?
My firm's website, lewislewellyn.com, hard to spell. So you can also go to sflaw.info that redirects to lewislewellyn.com. And also my book has a website as well, unshackledlaw.com.
That's great. And Dena, what was the name of your book again?
The name of my book is Winning in Your Own Court, 10 Laws for a Successful Career Without Burning Out or Selling Out.
Terrific.
Thank you.
I so appreciate each of you being here today. I love that There's so many of us out there trying to help lawyers lead better lives so they can be better members of the community, better parents, children, siblings. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, you can reach me at DougBrownJD.com is my website. Appreciate Answering Legal bringing us all together. And for those of you who are still with us, if you're having even the littlest inkling that maybe somebody like one of our panelists can help you, then it costs nothing to reach out, to take that first step. Talk to a number of people. Find someone who is the right fit for you. Not any one of us can tackle everybody who needs us, but everybody out there who's watching and listening would benefit from having one of these people or somebody like them in their corner. Why make your life more complicated than it needs to be? Find your person and get the help that's out there. We're waiting to help you. And thank you to Answering Legal for bringing us together. And you can also check out my Law Firm Success Strategies podcast. Maybe I'll have, we'll do a little series with each of you as podcast guests. I know I'm always looking for new people. So I'll be reaching out to each of you. I love this. All right. With that, I think we've reached our top of the hour. So again, thank you so much. That is all the time we have for our discussion. I'd like to thank Dena, Emily, Krystal, and Paul for joining me today.